Thank you.
You know, our last guest talked about something that you said. We're too emotional. We're is that only indicative of us as a people, as us as black people or other ethnic groups? White folks, are they just as emotional when dealing with issues as us?
Well, it comes down to each individual and what the individual is emotional about. Uh, uh, and depends on what the emotion is. Everybody's emotional about something because emotions do serve a purpose. What is an emotion? I mean, it's sadness, it's happiness, it's glee, which is hyper happiness, I guess. It's thrills, it's hatred, it's despair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are just feelings that people have that may change from one minute to the next, depending on the circumstances. So when people are in circumstances that call for a lot of different kinds of emotions, and some circumstances do, you have a full range of emotions, and in other circumstances, the same person may have very few emotions because there's very little to be emotional about. I mean, just walking in the woods, a person who is usually very, very hyperactive, you might say, and very, very quick to anger, or very quick to laugh, or very quick to cry. There's sometimes that same person in a different environment, and I just started to give the illustration, walking in the woods, the same person who is usually crying all the time or yelling all the time. All of a sudden, that person is walking in the woods somewhere and been out there for an hour, and the person is not yelling at anybody. And they usually yell at everybody and everything, and usually cursing and screaming. But now they are quieter than they have ever been in their entire existence. Same person, different circumstance. So it comes down to, are black people emotional? Yes, black people are emotional, but it depends on what the emotion is and what the circumstances are. And black people collectively have a tendency to be most emotional around what? Around unpleasant circumstances in which black people worldwide, according to observation, are usually in very unpleasant circumstances, and they act accordingly.
All right. Because one of the things, and folks, let me just tell you this: you've got to listen real keenly to what Neely Fuller says, because he uses logic, cause and effect. Then you can understand a lot what he says. It's really simple, but it's simple, but it sounds difficult at times. But you got to follow. It's not one of these shows that you can be doing something else, and you've got to really keen in and hang on to every single word. One of the things you also said is that we talk too much. Can you explain that?
Well, we talk too much. Talk is fine, great, but we talk too much about things that lead to non-constructive reactions. Now, our record shows that. No later than just this afternoon, I heard screaming and yelling, and it sounded like a black person's voice. I didn't really see the person because there were some trees in the way, but I could hear voices on the other side of the trees, and it sounded like it was coming from an area where there was traffic, and it seems like it was a case of what you call road rage, and everything was MF this and MF that and MF and I'll do this to your MF and whatnot. Okay, now, I was listening to that, and I was saying, okay, that's very traditional among black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere. I mean, very easy to just set us off, all right, because we have so many things that are on our minds and so many things that are coming at us, and bills overdue, car payments overdue, we don't have a car, we're borrowing a car, and it's overdue getting it back where it's supposed to be coming from, and the person who is waiting on the car is angry, and they're getting ready to give you a whole bunch of MFs when you get out of the car because you made them late for work. Okay, so people are on edge, and many black people are on edge all of the time because there's so many things going on at once. And so the least little thing I mean, this makes them almost ready to explode. So we have that tendency to talk a whole lot, and we're on our cell phones talking a mile a minute, and if you pass many, I won't say most because I can't quantify it, but many black people, you pass them on the sidewalk, and they're talking on the cell phone. It's usually a lot of conflict going on. You don't hear anything that will inspire you to be endearing to anybody, or will sound very inspirational to you. What you'll hear is MF this and MF that, and I told this MF, and this MF says one more thing to me one more time, and I'm coming over there, and I'm going to bring my stuff, and I got something for him, and blah, 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 and the blah, blah, and it's on and on and on. You find too much of that. Wherever in the Northwestern Hemisphere there are black people. And then, after we get through doing a whole bunch of that, sometimes in a crowd of people, we look around and say, more or less, what are you MFs looking at? All right, but we are yelling to the top of our voice in a subway station, okay? And everybody's looking around alarmed. I mean, little old ladies, with their shopping bags and whatnot, just trying to get wherever they're going and whatnot. And, and people are just alarmed. I mean, they think that a fight's fixing to break out right there. But the person who just got off of that cell phone looks around and just calls everybody that they see in sight, collectively, a bunch of nosy MFs. You ain't got nothing to do with my conversation. Mind your own business, okay? And if somebody says something, like even sometimes without even saying anything, a person just kind of smirks and laughs and points at the person and does something like a circle around the head, with pointing their finger, saying that the person is crazy. Oh, now you might hear 9 millimeters going off. All right? That's the next thing that comes out. Pop, 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 right there in the subway station. Because, hey, you just had this big argument with this person that you were ready to kill, and now this person in the subway makes a gesture like he's making a joke out of you, like you being a joke. So that did it. Now you got a Class A murder right there, 5 o'clock in the evening, right there in the subway. And there are millions of black people like that, all right? And there are some of the people, who are listening. Sometimes they're like that, or they feel like that, or they have been like that, or will be like that. Why? Because we are in those kind of circumstances. That's why. So what should we do about it? It all comes down to what we should do. One thing, according to what I have written, that I have studied over the years, and I keep repeating this over and over again, black people can change overnight that type of behavior by doing what? By minimizing all non-constructive activity and interaction with each other.
All right, hold that thought right there, because we got to take this short break and check the traffic and weather in the DMV. I'll let you finish your thought. And we also got some people who want to speak to you, and also some tweeters as well. Folks, you too can join the conversation with Neely Fuller Jr. Our number is 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next as the big show rolls on from the capital city on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Dr. Francis Westwell's his mentor. It's Neely Fuller Jr. You've heard her talk about him quite a bit. We're discussing racism, white supremacy, trying to get folks to understand that concept, what it is. Because, he says, and she said it as well, if you don't understand it and everything it entails, everything else, every single thing else that you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. Before we left, you were talking about, you was getting to the meat of the conversation about us having talk and speaking with each other. So, Neely Fuller Jr., I'm going to let you finish that.
Yes, no contact, no conflict. You minimize contact between people, you minimize conflict. Black people have an old custom because we have been, as far back as we can remember, black people have always been herded like cattle. The white supremacists have always seen to it that we are herded. They herd us just like cattle, just like sheep, just like the animals that they say that we are, okay? So you herd animals. I mean, you know, if you're running a duck farm, you want to keep all your ducks together. They call it keeping your ducks in a row. So the white supremacists have been trained in the system of white supremacy. Anytime you encounter black people, herd them together. Keep them all bunched up together. I mean, stepping on each other's toes. And just like chickens or ducks or hogs or cows, when they all herded together and stepping on each other's toes, you get that kind of reaction from all animals and from all creatures when they step on each other's toes. They start bumping up against each other and mooing, and you know, in the case of dogs, I mean, you know, they start barking and whatnot and biting each other and fighting each other. Cats will do the same thing. People will do the same thing. Herd them all together into a small space. And this, you know, don't feed them very much, just enough to get by. Don't give them very many resources, just enough to barely get by, to keep them breathing so that they can be of some service to the system of racism. But herd them all together. And this breeds animosity, all right? I mean, people just all up against each other too tight. This is why, if people would think about it, just think about it. In the old days, same people now. You're talking about black people, like in the movie Sounder. When people are spaced out, meaning they very seldom encounter each other, they have a tendency to be more, quote, unquote, whatever that means, civil to each other. Hi, y'all. How y'all been doing? Haven't seen you in about 4 months. You know, how the crops doing? You know, is the corn coming off all right? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We had a good crop now, and the Lord blessed us and whatnot. And how y'all doing over here? How's Amy? Did she get over rheumatism? Yeah, she's doing okay. She's doing okay, and she's going back to the city next month, you know. Well, how's everybody up there in Detroit City? Have you heard from them? You get a letter? You say, yeah, we heard from them. We got a letter. We very seldom hear from them because, you know, they don't have time to do much writing. But we did get a letter, and Uncle Fred, he read it to us and whatnot. It was a very nice letter, about 2 or 3 pages, you know. Yeah, well, I guess he had a lot to say. There's a lot to do up there in Detroit City. Well, okay, I guess I'll be getting along. All right. People remember those things. Some of them have participated in it. But when they came to the city, they turned out to be murderers. All right? Why? They're stepping on each other's toes, that's why. They're encountering each other on the bus. Everybody's full of tension. Everybody wants to kill right now. Why? Because everybody's always bumping up against somebody else. And you can't stand the bumping. But the white supremacists engineered every bit of it so that that would happen. See, they know what behavior is among all creatures. They're the smartest people on the planet. So they know how to handle creatures, they know how to handle things, and they definitely know how to handle black people more than anybody did, because black people have no agenda for handling themselves, which is why we need a code. And the code says, hey, we should know how we are. Stop this talk about how much we love each other, because it doesn't exist. It's a big lie that we keep telling each other. Stop trying to do it, even. Just back off. Give as much space to every black person that you encounter. Don't go seeking out black people's company. Now, that hurts us, because we are used to seeking each other's company. The minute that the white supremacists give us a little bit of space, we go tearing off looking for the company of other black people, and it ain't 15 minutes before we got an argument going. All right? That's not magic. That's by plan. The white supremacists already know this. So how do we minimize that conflict that we are going to have, because we are all carrying poison? Every one of us, myself included. We got a certain amount of poison that's been put in us by the white supremacists. Poison of what kind? Against other black people and against ourselves as black people, as individuals. We work against ourselves all the time. We prove that by, running all around trying to find a needle to stick in our arms to get some type of what? Some type of relief from the pain and the confusion and all of the chaos that's going on, okay? But it's not relief. It's just making our situation worse. And the white supremacists provide that, just like they did with the Indians. Here, Chief, take a swig of this fire water. It'll solve your problems. The white supremacists don't give you anything that's going to solve your problem. It's going to make it worse. Like they're scrambling all this sexuality now, all right? In all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The white supremacists are always burning midnight oil, scheming up a way that they're going to trip up black people in each one of those areas of activity. So when we wake up in the morning, they got a plan for us because we have no plan for ourselves, and they just dump their plan on us. And being highly, like we mentioned a minute ago, emotional people seeking some type of relief. Relief is an emotion. We want instant happiness. We want to be happy all the time, all right, which is not even natural, by the way, but we think it can be achieved. We want to be happy all the time. Never a moment of even being bored or tired, just happy, deliriously happy. Well, when you have that as a goal, and that goal can't be met, you go ballistic. And you go ballistic usually by harming someone else, or doing harm to someone else and yourself, because the two usually go together. But here again, Fuller, you're talking about the problem just like everybody does over and over again. What's the solution? Well, what I have in the textbook for victims of white supremacy is all about individual solutions, what an individual can do. And one thing we can do right this minute is get off of that cell phone if you're fixing or you're fixing to make a cell phone call. Don't call that person that you're fixing to call unless what? Unless it is absolutely necessary in order for you to solve a problem. Otherwise, if you don't have a problem in mind to solve by calling this person, you're going to solve a problem for that person or solve a problem for yourself. All of this talking just to be talking should stop immediately. With every black person on the planet who has a cell phone or any other kind of form of communication, don't say anything at all except maybe good morning and good evening all day long, on the job or anywhere. Good morning, good evening. That's it. That's all you say it all day. Why? If you don't have anything constructive to say that's going to really be of big help to the person that you're talking to, or what the person is going to say to you, if you're asking them for help, they will give you instructions as to how they can help you solve the problem that will give you the most help. We should become one thing, just have one thing in mind for the rest of our existence. In 2 words, problem solving. Why? Because we are considered to be the world's greatest problem makers. That's why. Here come the black people. That means nothing but trouble. Everybody has us on that list. Here they come. Hide everything that's worth anything. Push everybody. Get your children out of the way and whatnot, because you're not going to hear anything of constructive value from somebody with that kind of color in their skin. You're not going to hear anything that you can use that's going to make sense. That's a guarantee. That's how the whole world has been taught to look at us. By whom? By the white supremacists. And we have fallen into it, and we've gotten to the place we like it. But we can stop it right this minute. I'm not talking about training. I'm not talking about the next 50 years. I'm talking about overnight. I'm not talking to nobody unless I have something constructive to say. And that applies to Neely Fuller, too. Is Neely Fuller saying anything that's constructive right now? If he's not, he got no business on this program, period.
All right, hold that thought right there because we got to take a short break. We got some people want to talk to you. We got some tweets out there as well. People trying to reach out to you, folks. You got to listen very, very keenly when Neely Fuller speaks because he uses logic, cause and effect. It's really simple, but some people have missed it. And like you said, if you don't understand racism and white supremacy, how it works, and everything that it entails, then everything else, every single thing else that you think you understand, only serve to confuse you. We'll take your calls next, right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Where information. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. The number to call to reach him is 800-450-7876. And call your friends and tell them that Neely Fuller's on the radio. They'll appreciate it. They really will. If you're in the DMV area, you can listen to us on the FM side at 95.9 or on the AM side of 1450. If you got one of those fancy HD radios, we're on all the HD stations that are owned by Radio One as well. And you got a lot of ways you can listen to us. Tune in app. You can download the app. You can listen to us at WOLDC News as well. 800-450-7876. Again, that's the number to speak to Neely Fuller. Johnny's calling us from Long Beach out in California. Johnny, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Carl, thanks for taking my call. Good afternoon, Mr. Fuller.
Good afternoon.
And I'm still learning, and the truth is what is. But Mr. Fuller, the last time you were on, you gave an analogy about if you went to a school and there was a problem, you said that you wanted to know what the problem was. Or now, in that scenario, if it was others other than black people, I'm just saying any other people. Are you saying, to my understanding, are you saying that it should be justice that we should deal with irrespective of the person's whatever they are?
Oh yes, I mean if you have a definition that makes sense for the word justice. That word justice has been kicked around just like a whole bunch of other words. That's why I wrote a word guide. I made up a definition because I didn't like any of the definitions for the word justice. For one thing, most of the definitions had the word fair in it. Fair is associated with white. So therefore, fair being justice, meaning if you get justice, you must be talking about it's got to come from somebody who is fair-skinned. Okay? Fair, justice, the two words don't even sound alike. But the white supremacists set those words up. I say that they are the usual suspects. So they took the word justice and associated it with the word fair, even though they're nowhere sound alike or spell alike, nowhere in the same ballpark, put them together, and then they come up with titles like My Fair Lady and all like that, My Lady Fair, okay? And also say, you're also talking about purity, fair, pure, all right, and justice. So that automatically makes anybody with dark skin think, hey, if you talk about darkness, you can't be talking about nothing that has anything with justice. Because, justice is all about being fair. And being fair means what? Being white, okay? So, hey, if you're looking for some justice, you ain't going to get it around nothing dark, okay? You got to get it around something light, like light people, like light-skinned people, like white people. See, that's the way that equation goes. See, words are very important. The white supremacists understand this. They're the masters of words, and they know how to formulate ideas in people's minds that go on and on and on and on and serve the system of white supremacy. That's how their language is structured. So you have to be aware of this. That's why I put out a compensatory codified word guide, as an addition to the basic book, to be alert for the use of these kind of terms. So the word justice, the way that I defined it, I think is something that's functional. Because you can look it up yourself in all the different dictionaries. The word justice is very vague. Very vague. I asked a lawyer, someone that I knew, I said, what does justice really mean? What is the actual legal definition for the word justice? And he kind of chuckled and he said, and he was a lawyer, and he said, whatever the Supreme Court says it is. And I said, that ain't no criteria. Because the Supreme Court, what's that? And justices change. Not only that, some justices get disbarred. Some justices, people who are called justices, that's their title. Supreme Court justices, district court judges who make judgments, who are representative of this thing called justice. A lot of them go to jail. Okay? So that's the criteria. Don't you have a more solid criteria, a more universal criteria? Nope. So I said, okay, since I'm trying to write a compensatory code, okay, so I came up with a term back in the 1980s when that word was really kicked around a lot. And I said, I don't have a definition for that word. I use the word itself. So it took me I figured I could come up with a definition in about a week or two. It took me about a year. And this is it. And it's in the textbook. And I advocate that people use it because I think it's solid. It'll hold up until something better comes along. And if something better comes along, I'll adopt it. But it's in two parts. Part one, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's part one. Part two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, you underline the term constructive. Because, see, somebody might come up to you and say, hey, man, I need some help. Say, well, what kind of help do you need? Say, man, I need to have $200 right now. Right now, I got to have it. Say, well, okay, well, what you going to do with the $200? Say, man, I got to have a fix. Man, I got the shakes. I got to have a fix. No, well, see, that's not constructive. See, you're not solving a problem there. You can only help a person if you're doing something constructive. That's justice. It's got to be constructive. And you help the person that needs help the most. Like if it's 10 people in a room, everybody most likely needs some kind of help. But you start with the person who needs help the most. It's a very simple formula that I think should be universal. Until somebody comes along with a definition better than that, I'm going to stick with this one because I think it will hold up. When you recite it that way, that's what you mean when you use the term justice, I think it'll hold up on your job and everything else. Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. You got to have both of those things. And then part two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And that going with that, the world would be a better place overnight if everybody got up in the morning and went to bed at night with that in mind when it came to that word justice. Did I answer the question? Because you got to watch me because Neely Fuller sometimes slip out from under you there. You'll ask a question, and he went all way around Robin's barn and didn't really answer your question. So sometimes I digress so far that, I get too far away from the question. I hope I didn't do that this time.
Mr. Fuller, so if I understand you correctly, that applies to if a white person needed justice, then that should be applied to that person as well, versus anybody else. As long as they needed justice, then we should be there to help them out. Am I correct?
Does a person need constructive help? See, that's why I underlined that word. I'm actually just following up what you're saying. You're talking about constructive help. As long as they need constructive help, then that applies to any human being as well, if I'm hearing you correctly. Any person. See, justice is all about people. Correctness is all about people and things and people and animals and all like that. But anybody that you encounter, if a white person is in a burning car and you are coming down the road, you're the only person around. The car ran off the road. The person is screaming. They can't get the seatbelt off, all right, because they're panicking and whatnot. But you see where that seatbelt belt button is, and you're just a few steps away from it. So you got to make a decision. The decision that the code says you should make. Right then and there. You don't know nothing about that white person except it's a white person. You can see that. You run up and hit that button. That's what you should do. The code says so. Why?
Okay, sir. Then I understand you completely, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, all right, thanks, Johnny. Neely Fuller Jr., a caller wants to know the name of your book, and we should have done that. And they want to know how to spell your first name. How can they get the book?
Oh, well, my first name is spelled Neely. Now, what that name means, I got no idea. I mean, I think it's in one of those old country names where you didn't have time to figure out names for people. You just look at the tractor and see if it's got any kind of words on it and call them about whatever you see on the side of that tractor. Now, I just said that as a pun, maybe. But you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is the basic title of the book, which is the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code. It has a longer title called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, but those words don't mean anything until you read the first part of the book, in which those words are explained. It's a reason why they're there. But it's a textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy. If you don't perceive yourself as being a victim of white supremacy, the book does not apply to you. And it applies to the individual person. Things that you can do without asking anybody anything. That's how the book is written. You as an individual, you should be regarded as an individual, whole nation within itself, within yourself. You should be able to function like you are just a majority of one. Because the theory, the presentation in the book is, if you solve the problems of each individual, you can solve the problems of every individual if they use the same formula. And that formula should be based on the logic that the Creator put into the universe. That's universal logic. Cause and effect. Things that are correct, things that are incorrect. Things that are constructive, things that are non-constructive. Go to producejustice.com.
We're coming up on a break real soon. We'll let you give out the title of the book again. And before we go to the break, this is a question I'll let you ponder while we get to the traffic and weather. Please ask Dr. Fuller my question, please. Did the system of white supremacy come from a mindset, and what mindset was that? Was that the mindset of inferiority or superiority? So I'll let you respond to that on the other side, but we've got to check the traffic and weather in the DMV. Folks, you too can join our conversation with Neely Fuller Jr. As he mentioned, you've got to listen really keenly, use his logic, cause and effect. It seems simple. Join us right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450, WOL, where information is power. Moment, just want to remind you the Power Talk conference is going to be held next month, June the 22nd, 23rd at Ballou High School in Washington, D.C. For more information, go to powertalkseries.com. We're going to give you more information as you keep listening in the coming days. Before we get back to him, though, let me remind you, some of the other folks are going to be stopping by. Clinical psychologist Dr. Jerome Fox is going to be here. His book is, is Addicted to White. Holistic doctor Scott Whitaker is also going to join us. Entertainment executive Tim Hutchinson will be here as well. And also geopolitical analyst Craig Hewlett. So tell all your friends to keep their dials locked on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. So, Neely Fuller Jr., the question again is, please ask Dr. Fuller my question, did the system of white supremacy come from a mindset, and what mindset was that, and was the mindset inferiority or superiority?
Yes, everything comes from the mind. We were given a brain, and the brain encompasses a thing called the mind. And the mind is supposed to be used, presumably, in my opinion. I could be in error. In fact, everything that I write could be in error. And I always tell people, put it to a test. Put everything to a test. Neely Fuller is no expert on nothing. So test it. So, yes, you have that. The white supremacists had the mindset. Somebody thought it up. I don't know when. There are different scholars and whatnot, and different religious groups and whatnot who say that they have done plenty of exhaustive research. So I don't touch it because I say simply I don't know when it started or how it got started. I just know for sure that it's here. This thing called white supremacy is real. I do know that. I've experienced enough of it. I've observed enough of it, and I say so in my book, to come to that conclusion. Now, even with that, I could be in error. There are some people who have told me, oh, Fuller, come on. There's no such thing as white supremacy. That's just an illusion that you have built up in your own mind, and you've sold yourself on it. So, come on, get off of it. Get modern, man. The world has changed. It's moved on. You're old and you're stuck in the past, okay? Well, I say, when people have told me that, I've said, you know what? Maybe I need that eureka moment. And I've gone out and taken a look, but every time I want to say to this entire world audience now, every time I've done it with great hope and hoping that I had been in error all this time, I get disappointed every time. Because sure enough, I just scratched the surface a little bit. And there's racism right there just as big as it always was. In fact, more refined, more advanced than it ever has been. And I say, my goodness. I mean, I sure would hope that before I take my last breath, that it's on its way out. And what I see is, I mean, they have just put another coat of paint on it and put some sugar on it and gotten people to fall for it hook, line, and sinker in every area of activity. And I see all through it. And I point it out to people. But I don't tell them to take my word for it. I tell them to go test it and see if it's still there. See if you saw what I saw. Okay? And that's what you should do with everybody, because the white supremacists got everybody out here, got a lot of black people out here, I mean, you know, spreading all kinds of things that are not so. So don't trust anything that you hear from anybody. Test it yourself. It's not hard to test. You know when racism is there and when it isn't. You don't have to go far. I mean, you don't have to go far down the block or anywhere, in any direction, that you will find it, because it will definitely find you if you're a person of color. Now, where was I? Hello?
Yes, you're on the point. You answered the question.
Did I answer the question?
You certainly did.
Yeah, I mean,
and I got
me now because
I'll be there.
I'm getting old, you know.
Right. But anyway, hang on a sec, Doc. 800-450-7876. Sandra's been holding for a while. She's got a question for you. Sandra, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Hi, Carl and Dr. Fuller. Dr. Fuller, I'm holding your book right now. I know you said, I see the word racism on the back of your book cover, and in parentheses next to it have white supremacy. So does those two words mean the same thing?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I'd like to answer a question right quick if I can. The answer is yes. Racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. So there's no other form of racism nowhere on the planet other than white supremacy. So but the white supremacists would tell you, oh, there's racism everywhere. It's not, it's not just white people, practicing racism. I mean, everybody practices racism. See, that's a part of their confusion program. See, they confuse us with words.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Oh, gosh, I almost forgot now. Oh, gosh. Okay, I almost forgot. Okay, let me mention something else. You say some of our youth be saying the word MF and, then they want to fight one another. And I think that's a small segment of our community. And I think the larger community use the F word more than we do.
Oh, they do. They use the F word, but they don't. Yes, ma'am, but they don't put mother in front of it.
Right.
If you pay attention, unless I've been misinformed, if you stay strict attention, oh, yeah, everything is F this and F that and F this among, white men, in office buildings and in ties and whatnot, sometimes white women.
Right.
F this and F all, and a whole lot of GDs, using God's name.
So, Dr. Fuller,
black people kind of stay away from that. Even black people who say MF, they don't use a whole lot of GDs.
So, Dr. Fuller, those of us who don't want to use the expression white supremacy, we can use racism, and that means about the same. For those of us who are uncomfortable using the term white supremacy, we can use racism.
People see the whole reason for using any word. A word is nothing but a tool.
Right.
And you always want a tool to do the most constructive thing.
Yes.
So if you're in an environment where black people or white people, because, you're in an environment sometimes where you're with white people and black people, and you start saying white supremacy, you make everybody nervous.
Right.
You'll notice that right quick. All right? So you don't do that. You're not there to make people nervous. You're there to solve problems. See, keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Every black person should be about one thing, every breath that they take, solving problems. That we get to be known to be problem solvers. In fact, when you look up and see a black person coming a mile away, you say, here comes a problem solver. And they say, that's a problem solver? Say, yeah. Those people used to be the biggest problem makers on earth. But overnight, they decided they were going to become what? Problem solvers.
Thank you, Dr.
Anytime you see a black person now, man, you are looking at somebody who is coming to solve a problem. They ain't going to hang around very long if they ain't solving no problem. They just itching to solve a problem. If you ain't got no problem to solve, they move on because they're about solving problems. That's how they think. That's how they operate.
Thank you, Dr.
How they
Fuller.
go.
Bye-bye.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. Doctor, another question for you. Please ask Brother Neely Fuller how we can change the emotional and retributive behaviors he described. Like he said, the emotions lead to violence. How can we minimize contact with the disruptive people since many times they're in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our schools? This is from Dr. Myers, Black Women for Positive Change.
Minimize conflict by minimizing contact. You say, well, sometimes you're just sitting right next to somebody in a classroom, but that person is very disruptive and all like that. All you do, you minimize conflict by don't even look over there. Just look straight ahead or look into a book and then, you're minimizing contact as best you can. You can't leave the room. You're a prisoner there in the room, so the person is trying to start something with you and whatnot, just don't say anything, okay? Now, if the person hits you, then you just jump up and move, okay? You're still minimizing conflict by minimizing contact. If the person just pokes you on the shoulder, don't you hear me talking to you? Okay. Well, now the person is making physical contact, and they're probably getting ready to make more. So you just get up and move. Now, if the instructor, if you're in that type of setting, says, why are you moving? Say, well, I'm trying to avoid, you answer the question, I'm trying to avoid conflict, sir. I'm trying to avoid conflict, ma'am. And they say, well, what kind of conflict? This conflict. You don't have to tell them no details, because if the person who is going to pursue you, now you have moved, you've gotten up out of your chair and moved 2 or 3 feet away, they got to get up out of their chair and follow you. Now, the average person is not going to do that much. If they do, then now they're inviting other people to get involved, all right? Just in other words, we have to discipline ourselves, all right? If you're sitting on the bus, you don't have to move, but if the person sitting next to you, just sits there and starts talking and whatnot and starts rambling on and whatnot, they might be on drugs or whatever, and just look at you and say, how come you ain't talking to me? You think you better than me? Because you got a job? Because you wearing that suit and tie? If you happen to be wearing a suit and tie, all right? Now the person, don't say anything except just get up like you're going to get off the bus. So you have a code for every situation, because you're in a volatile situation. You're on a battlefield 24/7. Be ready for anything that happens and have a code for it. And distance between the source of conflict is the first order of business for black people. Don't escalate the conflict. Don't start thinking, well, I got a right to sit here and not be bothered. So if he says one more thing to me, I'm going to take my fist and go upside his head. No. Don't escalate. De-escalate. Because you're going to encounter this all during your days. That's not the way you want to handle it. Because at some point, you'll get the losing end of that. You don't ever want to be a loser. You already lost enough on account of the system of white supremacy itself. That's lost enough. You're born in a prison called the system of white supremacy. Don't get into a prison riot, because that's not going nowhere. Don't participate in a prison riot. And when you're fighting other black people about anything, that's what that is. And then the white supremacists is going to come along and hit you both over the head. All right? Now you're both in trouble. Because you're doing what? Being disruptive, disturbing the peace. That's what they call it. You say, well, I was defending myself. Well, we'll sort all that out later on. Meanwhile, you lost your job and all like that behind something that you could avoid by doing what? No contact, no conflict. This is in the book. Those 4 words, no contact, no conflict, I have found from experience, because I've done it. I still do it. I avoid, get away from the source of conflict. Get away from it. Don't go toward it under no circumstance. You know, and if somebody starts even raising their voice and all like that, even if you're talking to someone that you know, a close associate, and they start getting angry and raising their voice and all like that, just simply say, well, look, Willie, I'll talk to you some other time, okay? I got to go now. I got to go. And then you go. Don't stand around.
All right. And we got to go right now. Hang on a second, Doc. We got to take a quick break here. We're closing on the top of the hour. Folks, if you didn't learn anything today, what he just said is worth listening to us. 800-450-7876. You too can join the discussion with Neely Fuller Jr. We'll take your calls next after this short break right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. Thank you for staying with us, folks, or if you're just getting off work at 6 o'clock straight up on the East Coast. Our guest is Dr. Francis S. Welson's mentor. His name is Neely Fuller Jr. His book, the short name of the book is called The Code, but it's got a real long title. I'll let him give us the title and how you can get a copy of the book. It's a workbook and it tells you how to deal with racism and white supremacy. The number to call to reach him, again, is 800-450-7876. Let's go to line 4. Benny's calling us. He's in Texas. Benny, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes, I was just thinking about when I was on hold. Has the doctor ever thought about them teaching his book in class or grade school?
Somebody asked me that just no later than no other time than the yesterday. That's when it was. Somebody called me and told me that that's what they were considering doing. And I say, by all means, if you know, but not as a regular course. See what I mean? Right. It's a compensatory code, meaning it's designed to fill in gaps. Gaps in what? Gaps in understanding how to solve problems. See, I wrote a book with the intention of actually solving a race problem. That was my intention. Okay, whether I pull it off or not, and most likely I won't, but that's my attempt. I mean, why do anything less than that? You got a problem, solve it, okay?
Right.
So in a school, the way you solve problems is to talk about, first of all, identify the problem, and then you come up with different ways of trial and error of solving the problem. That's how all things are done as far as what we call throughout the entire universe, making progress. It's just a series of eliminating problems. You eliminate the problem of getting over that mountain maybe by figuring out how to make a hole in the mountain and running a train through it, okay? And you found out from trial and error and whatnot, you had made some mistakes and all like that. Say, yeah, that's much better than trying to climb that mountain every time we get ready to go somewhere. So, you know, we just dug a great big hole in the mountain and built a highway through it or ran a train through it. And now, rather than 7 days to get to the other side of the mountain, we get there in 20 minutes. Okay? That's a big difference. Problem solving. And it's the same way with a book. All books should be about solving problems. But the white supremacists, and this is why black people are so dangerous to each other, we have been raised on a steady diet in many of the books that the white supremacists put out, and like TV programs and all like that, of doing what? People killing people. People killing people, all right? That is glamorized. And we absorbed that at an early age. So the way you settle particularly any kind of argument is to kill somebody. Kill 2 or 3 somebodies. That's the white supremacists' way of doing everything. That's why they worship guns and swords. Go in any city, and all of the heroes you see on these statues and whatnot are not people who are doctors and lawyers and teachers. They are whom? Some type of soldier. Not knocking the soldiers as individuals. I was one. But I'm saying that's the pattern of the system of white supremacy. Every statue, somebody got a sword in his or her hand. Even the Oscar. They're talking about giving out awards for a movie. But Oscar, watch Oscar. What is Oscar holding in front of it? A sword. What is the sword for? You're talking about Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney and, and Mr. Rogers maybe getting an award. What is the sword for? Most swords are for killing people. Okay? But that's what we have been raised on. And then they wonder why the death rate in Washington, D.C., in Baltimore, anywhere you find black people and white people, is so high. People killing people. Why? We have been taught by the white supremacists to worship death and anything that will make death. So we like to see things that are dead, mostly people, more than anything. We'd rather see a dead person than to see a dead squirrel. All right?
Right.
A dead person makes us happy. A dead squirrel, we might cringe at it and say, well, that's a poor squirrel. Somebody killed a squirrel. But you kill a person, that's getting to be so routine. The person who was killed, you don't even spell their name correctly in the day's paper. I mean, we're nothing. And we need to get away from that. Black people need to be the pioneers in getting away from that type of mentality. And the white supremacists are the most poisonous people in the world when it comes to spreading that type of mentality. And they know it.
I got one more main question. Most of our black people feel, especially black women, feel that we are closer solving the white supremacy since a so-called black woman married into so-called black blood. But I don't think she's black, but people think she's black. Well, what you think about that? That was my main question, and I take it off the air about the so-called royal wedding that happened, and I take it off the air, and I listen to you. Bye.
Well, the code book describes that as racial showcasing. See, in other words, the white supremacists, just like they did with President Obama and his first lady, Michelle Obama, the president's title in the office with no power. They saw to it that he wasn't going to be able to do anything before he got there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put him there. That's to the extent that the white supremacists had anything to do with it. When I say they, that's who I'm talking about. Not talking about all people. I'm talking about the white supremacists. Nobody had ever even heard of Senator Obama to speak of, all right? But they allowed him to become president, just like they allowed Mr. Nelson Mandela over on the other side of the water to become president. Walked right out of Robbins Island, a prison, after being there for 27 years, and went right to the presidency. But what they do, they move all the chairs, so to speak. It's like giving you a factory to run, and when on the day that you have the ribbon cutting ceremony and you walk into the factory, all the machinery is gone. That's what they do to black people all the time, and I knew that was going to be the case. It's the same case with the so-called royal couple. This is showcasing. Put a black person up front. It used to be all black faces to the back. That's about 40 or 50 years ago. Black people to the back of everything. Sit on the back of the bus. Sit in the back of the theater. Black people out of sight. All right? Now, in the refinement stage of white supremacy, they say all black faces to the front. Okay? Find some black faces, run out there in the street and pull them off the street and put them right down front. 10, 20, 30, 40 black faces. Fill up all the chairs in front with black people. That's to do what? To give the illusion that racism no longer exists, because the white supremacists know about illusions. They have illusions in order to cause the one thing that they absolutely rely on. That's confusion. Okay? Because they have found that when you confuse people, you can control them. So what better way to confuse black people than to have them thinking that it's Jubilee time? Every 2 or 3 weeks, look at this black person. This black person has what? How much money does this black person has? Has $1 billion. Well, trot another one out here. How much does he have? He's got $1 billion. How much does that fourth one have? Oh, that fourth one has $5 billion. All right. Now they'll trot out maybe 5,000 in the future black people. 5,000 people is a lot of people. But the white supremacists they are master scientists, social scientists, any kind of science. They know it, okay? They'll trot out in the future maybe 5,000 black people. I mean, in one line. That's a lot of people. And all of them will be triple billionaires. 5,000 black billionaires. And so the average black person will say, wow, racism is dead. Look at all the poor white folks that even can't pay their next car note. And you got 5,000 black people who are billionaires? Racism is dead. But here's what. The white supremacists work on a world scale. So they'll say, yeah, we can make 5,000 black billionaires because we control the money anyway because we control them. So we know where that money is going. I mean, they can hold it, and they can brag about it, and they can sit on it, and they can flash it all over the place. But we'll fix it so that it comes right back to us because that's the way the white supremacists operate. They operate so that everything comes right back to us, to them eventually. See, they see to it that black people can hold money, but they can't hold it, and pass it on. That's the key. And they see to it. Who is going to inherit the money that all the black people that you name now who are in the Fortune 500? The white supremacists have already figured. Well, we might let maybe the next generation, just one, get a little bit of it. But that third generation, forget it.
Hold that thought right there, Neely Fuller Jr. We're going to take a quick break. That's some real talk right there. Folks, you too can join this discussion with Neely Fuller Jr. Our number is 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
This traffic report is brought to you by the Positive Coaching Alliance. Traveling on the inner loop of the Beltway, expect to...
Thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. Most of you know Dr. Wilson, when she was here, mentioned him quite a bit, said he was her mentor. The number to call to speak to him is 800-450-7876, discussing racism, white supremacy. And again, they always said, if you don't understand it and how it works, then every single thing that you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. Ellis is calling us. He's on line 2. He's calling from Jersey. Ellis, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Yes, thank you, brothers. Dr. Fuller, I have a question for you. This is a question I've been posing 50,000 times over the last 30 years. And every time I pose this question, I get answers that I get questions. I get answers that I put more disheartening. First of all, here's the situation. Can you tell me who you think is the most dangerous person to the interests of black people worldwide, whether here or worldwide?
The most dangerous individual person?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know, because I always look at it as a collective. I look at it as a system. I call it, in capital letters, the system of white supremacy, because I say that's the only real government on the entire planet. All these other so-called governments are really non-existent when you start talking about the system of white supremacy. That is a system. It's the most powerful system of government and the most powerful religion that is in recorded history. There's no religion more powerful than the religion of white supremacy. The white supremacists practice their religion to the hilt, and they have a complete disregard for everybody else's religion. They stomp on everybody else's religion unless the parts of that religion help to make them stronger. The white supremacists do not tolerate the existence of any religion that contests the existence of white supremacy, and the record shows it. And many people who say that they have a very strong religion, if they are people of color, when they encounter the white supremacists said, you better back off. I don't care what your religion is. You got color in your skin, and your religion is not more powerful than mine. I don't care what you call it. The religion of white supremacy is going to dominate you And if you got any offspring or any buddies or anything like that, it's going to dominate them. Why? Because that's what white supremacy means, ma'am, sir. And if you think your religion can contend with mine, try me. And I'll show you in 5 minutes that you will knuckle under to me every time. And so far, they have proven to be correct. So far. I'm not saying it'll stay that way, but that's the way it is right now. There's no government, no group of people, nowhere on this planet that have the power and the intelligence, the intellectual power I'm talking about, than the white supremacists collectively. See, they're not individuals. Individuals make it up, but you can't single out an individual. It's a system. That's why every system of anything is more important than the individual who is just trying to renegade themselves and command power and all like that. So in answer to the question, the most powerful individual? No. It's no powerful individual more powerful than the collective system of white supremacy that I know of. And if there is, I'd like to know who that is.
Right. I understand your question, but your answer. But suppose, for example, we could distill that type of attitude into one individual and or even a group or a group that we could put our finger on and identify. Would you say that's possible?
It's possible for one individual to have the power to dominate the thinking of all other people on the planet?
Part of it. Part of that power. I know it's a system. I understand that.
It's possible, I think. I mean, many things are possible, but it hasn't been done yet.
Now, here's the reason why I'm asking that question. Let's say, for example, that person that we would agree on is possible to be a distillation of white supremacy. Now, in my mind, there are so many people. It's hard. It's so hard to distinguish between any of them. But in my mind, it would be someone like a Rudolph Giuliani or others. Now, here's the scenario: we distill our analysis into one person or one group, and we're standing on a corner, and we're waiting for the light to cross the street. And the person standing next to us, person or groups that we know are antithetical to our survival, evil person or group. The light's changing. The person and or crossing the street is going to be hit by an oncoming car that they do not see. And you're looking at this whole situation. What would you do?
What would I do if I see a person fixing to cross the street in the path of a car?
Especially a group and or someone that is antithetical and deadly and dangerous to the interests of African people. What would you do? And you're in a position to save them, or not. What would you do?
Oh, well, see, I don't know of any such person. Okay. That's just it. I just don't know of any such person that has all power.
Well, that's why I'm saying that it could be a collective or a person. I'm trying to cover all parameters because it's difficult for people of African descent to answer that question, no matter who they are.
Well, I mean, it's difficult for me to answer that question because, see, I'm dealing with a system. See, that individual person having all power, I have never met such a person. I've heard of them. One of them is Jesus.
Well, would you intervene?
A person that could walk the water, a person could make the blind see and the lame walk. I mean, at the snap of a finger. See what I mean? But I have never encountered such a person.
Okay, but
I hear that some people who are walking around right now can do that. I mean, they can snap their finger. I mean, the blind can see, and people can walk the water. But I haven't seen it happen. I mean, that's just an experience I haven't had.
But would you
that being an experience I haven't had, I don't know how I would react to actually encountering a person that has all power, a person that can raise the dead.
No, Dr. Phil. I'm not going that far because that becomes metaphysics, which is something that I can go into it, but we can't do that right now. I'm saying that if there was someone that we could identify as an evil person that was diabolically opposed to the interests of black people, if we encountered a situation where that person would be either killed or what would we do?
I don't know, because, see, I've never had that experience, and if I was confronted with that, I have no way of verifying that person has all power.
Suppose you could.
See, I have written in my book that the creator of the universe has all power.
Well, let me jump in here for a second, and maybe we can make it a little plainer, Ellis. Yeah. How do we deal with the sellouts then? Because that's basically what he's saying. How do we deal with it?
Oh, what they call the sellouts?
Right, the Sambos, the sellouts, the people who are selling us out.
Yes, well, the code says, first of all, I don't give them that name. Because, first of all, when I start looking at what I've said this for years, according to the code, when I'm looking for the Tom of the week, the Uncle Tom of the week, the first thing I do is rush to a mirror. I'm looking at him. There's no way to be in the system of white supremacy and not be a servant to the system of white supremacy. It ain't happening.
What would you do if you were standing on the corner next to Cecil Rhodes? What would you do? And the truck's coming to knock him away. What would you do?
Oh, if I know that's Cecil Rhodes, I probably would let the truck hit him. All right, because I have identified him distinctly as an enemy to me. And
that is the reason. The reason why I'm posing this question is because in all of the 30 years that I posed this question, I've had to modify it a little bit. 99% of the time, black folks would say they would save him, even though they know that person would do them in down the road.
Oh no, he has to be already doing it. Okay. Oh, no, I mean, and I know that he's already doing it. I mean, you're talking about a one-on-one thing, but I was speaking generally speaking. See, I suspect the average white person may be a white supremacist if they're able to be. All right? The code says that I have to do that. I'm duty bound to do that, and I say that openly. Hello?
99% of, and I mean it's 99% of black folks that I've talked to over the years have said that they would try to save him. And I said, well, why would you do that? Because, well, we don't make life, and we can't take a life. Even if
if they say that, then they say what they said. So you know what I mean? The code book says this about that type of thing. That's why I'm saying it's no such thing as a black person being a sellout. You can't sell what you don't own. We are owned already. We have an owner. That owner are the white supremacists of this planet. If you got color in your skin, you are owned by the white supremacists of this planet. They already have title to everything that I do. They nurture me. They feed me. They clothe me. They house me. They tell me when I'm not going to have a house. And there's nobody that can overrule them. Not on this planet. Nobody.
Ellis, thank you for your call. We got to keep moving. We've got to take a real short break. Thank you, Ellis, calling us from New Jersey. 800-450-7876. You too can speak to Neely Fuller. We'll take your calls next on FM 95.9 and also AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
The Universe Soul Circus is coming to National Harbor, June 21st through.
Thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. discussing racism, white supremacy. He says racism is white supremacy. And again, if you don't understand how it works and everything that it entails, everything else that you think you understand will only serve to confuse you. You got to listen really keen. Neely Fuller Jr. uses logic, cause and effect. As he mentioned, some people trying to drag in the superiority and the inferiority, and he says it's the system. He keeps saying it, the system. It's like a class, a logic class. Those of you who've taken logic in college, if you're probably going to law school, that you remember, you'll understand how to understand what Neely Fuller is saying. 800-450-7876, number to call and get in. Charles III is joining us. He's on line 3. We're calling from the district. Charles, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Thanks for taking my call, Carl. Mr. Fuller, I have a question for you. A lot of times when blacks get together to do something constructive, there seems to be another element where some will try to bring in the LGBTQ as if to kind of throw it off. How would you recommend we deal with that, where we want to keep the focus and not bring in the homosexual side of things there?
In 1972, I started talking endlessly about what was coming. And I said the white supremacists are going to start a scatter-sexual program worldwide. It's going to come out of nowhere, and it's going to hit us like a ton of bricks, and we're not going to be prepared for it. I saw that coming. I saw symptoms of it in the late 1960s. In 1972 at Howard University, I made a long talk on it. People rolled their eyes at the ceiling. I said there will come a time when black males would be aspiring to be black females, and black females will be aspiring to be black males. In other words, doing a wholesale switcheroo. And the white supremacists would be orchestrating the entire thing. Why? Because when you can control people's sexuality and tell them what sex is and what it isn't, and what form it's supposed to take, and when to match this with matching that, and what not to match this with that, you don't have to do anything else if you want to control the people in the other areas of activity. That's the 8th area of activity. Sex is a very powerful force. The white supremacists understand that. That's why they study black people's sexuality, right down to the smallest detail. And they have done this years ago. And when they get ready to play that card, and that's what they're playing now, and they've been doing it for about 20 years, but they're ramping it up every day on television and everything else. They're spreading it like wildfire. They're sending out their cadres, well-trained people, to disrupt black people's male-female thing, that arrangement. They want to make that completely obsolete. In fact, I've said on many a program, and might have said it on this one, right now, the white male anus is going to be the new black vagina. The white male anus is going to be the new black vagina. Black vaginas are slowly becoming obsolete because the white supremacists are declaring that they're obsolete. So black females looking around for a male, because all the black males, particularly all the young ones, some of the old ones, they don't bother with them because they're too old to be bothered with, so they don't worry about them. But all the young black males, they're dumping money on them and whatnot. Come and jump aboard, and you can write your own ticket. Just support what we are doing. Don't worry about the future or anything like that. We'll handle that, because all this is going to be one of the most beautiful things for black people that has ever happened. That's what they're selling, and they're blatant with it. They're so confident that it's going to work that they say that these black people are not even questioning what we're doing, when they usually question everything. But they're just jumping aboard. And we're going to help them to jump, because we're going to finance everything. If they come around looking for a house or looking for a better education, tighten up on them. If they're coming around looking for anything that makes sense, tighten up on them. Better law enforcement, and all like that. Tighten up on them. Bring out the tanks. Bring out the tear gas. Bring out all the healthier equipment. But if they want to lead the LGBTQ, Z, X, Y, Z, whatever we come down, that's going to cause total confusion among them sexually, give them any amount of money that they want. Listen to what I said now. The white supremacists have a mandate. Any black person that shows up, drunk or sober, all right, and he says, I want to contribute in whatever way I can to the furtherance of scattersexuality among our people as a panacea for all our problems. I mean, it's going to really take us a long way in the future toward being the type of people that we ought to be. I want you to help me do it. And they will say, boy, step right up and fill out this blank here, sign your name, and we will put in our name, and you put in the amount of money that you want. Because we are looking for every black person that we can get, particularly intellectual black people, to sign up for scattersexuality to the max among all of the black people of this entire planet. That is a crucial part of our plan for the next 500 or 600 or 700 years, because we know that we can mess you up sexually. We can mess you up in all the other areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, politics. Throw your religion out the window. We can mess you up forever in everything from now on, because you won't know what sex you belong to, because everything will be sex and nothing will be sex. And now, let me introduce you to the white male anus over here, boy. I mean, just as an introduction. I mean, let's get this thing started right now and forget about that black female vagina. Seal them up, close them up, and let them turn to each other and lick and laugh on each other, because that's all they're going to be left with.
Okay.
I hope I made my point.
You made your point, but the question is, how do we push back on that?
By saying just what I just said. That's a white supremacist conspiracy. Don't buy into this stuff that you're homophobic. In the whole years that I've been out here, it's just 2 occasions when somebody challenged what I was saying. Both times, it was white people. One time, a white lady at a house that said, Mr. Fuller, you're teaching hate. I was in her house. And I said, okay, school is now in session. All right? I'm teaching hate. Now, just how am I doing that? I put it in the form of a question, because questions and answers will always take everybody where they need to be. And with this thing of sexuality, that's all you got to do is just ask questions. And the answers will take you right where you need to be, even when you think that they won't. Just ask enough questions. Don't argue. See, don't push back. Just say, okay, I'm going with what you're saying. Okay? I'm going with what you are saying. You are saying LGBT is the way, I'm not pushing against that. We got them in my family, our families, and all like that. I know I've been told that I have them in mine, all right? At one time, there was somebody who said that I was that way, but I'm not, all right? Not that I need to say that, all right, because they ain't nobody's business either, okay? That's another thing. Black people should not be going around talking about their sexuality, period, to white people, because white people need to explain theirs first. That's according to the code. When white people come around and black people asking black people to explain anything about themselves sexually, you tell them, wait a minute, let's go through procedures here. We're in the system of white supremacy. So the way this is supposed to work, according to counter-racist science, is that you tell me all about your sexuality, and then I will contemplate, maybe I will tell you about mine, because I'm not obligated to say anything to you as a white person in the system of white supremacy about anybody's sexual record. When you look at the sexual record of white people with the black people of this planet, I'm going to say that again. Look at the sexual record of white people with black people on this entire planet, even as we speak. And they talking about some type of sexual dysfunction among black people? You got to be kidding. All of the white people who approach us with that, no, don't even mention it. You should be ashamed to even think about it around us. With the kind of records you have with us when it comes to sexuality and the way that you have messed with us, you meaning collectively, the white people of this planet, under the system of white supremacy. Don't you dare talking about sexual scandal among black people. Scandal? You all wrote the book on scandal.
All right, thanks a lot, Carl. Have a good day. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Charles. We couldn't have run a break here, folks. Our last break, and wow, that was real powerful. 800-450-7876 is the number to call. Speak to our guest, Neely Fuller Jr. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and take more of your phone calls right here on FM 95.9 and also AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. As you just heard, racism, white supremacy is the topic, and we're going to give him a chance to tell us about his book in a moment. But let me just remind you, some of the other people who are going to be stopping by in the next few days. You're going to hear from clinical psychologist Dr. Jerome Fox. You know, his book, his best-selling book, Addicted to White. Also, holistic doctor Scott Whitaker is going to join us. He's going to be calling us from Bahrain. Also, entertainment executive Tim Hutchins is going to join us, and also geopolitical analyst Craig Hewlett is going to tell us what's going on with 45 and the rest of the world. Neely Fuller Jr., before I ask you this other tweet question, can you give us the title of your book and how we can get a copy of your book?
Oh, you can get a copy of the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook and a word guide. Some people get both books. The second book is just a codified counter-racist word guide. It's an extension of the basic book, but most people get the basic book. But you can get the basic book and or the supplementary volume. It's basically the same book. I just couldn't get it in one volume. But most people get the basic book because that's adequate within itself. You don't really have to get the second book. A lot of people get the second book too. But you can get the basic book by going to producejustice.com, or you can get both books by going to the same website, producejustice.com, PRODUCE, Produce Justice, because that's what we're really ultimately trying to do. Ultimately, I mean, as an initial step, replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And the book, both volumes are addressed to the individual person, because the concept is if you solve the problems on the planet of each individual person in the most constructive manner, then you solve the problems of all people collectively in the most constructive manner. I mean, that's the logic. And I think it will hold up, that type of logic, that type of thinking. So you address everything to the individual person, because you're an individual person. You're born into the world as an individual. That should be given the utmost regard, the individual person, because people usually speak of black people getting together, speak of the collective. Well, if you got a collective of black people who are not problem solvers, you just got a collection of black people who are problem makers. So if you can solve the problem of each individual black person, and that's what the book is designed to do, and then you have each individual black person buy into what the book presents so that you can solve each and every problem that you have as an individual person, then when you have the collective, you know, when one black person interacts with another, you've got all constructive activity going on there. Why? Because you have a code. The white supremacists understand that principle. That's why they don't have to have endless meetings. They have meetings, but when it comes to dealing with black people, the average white person, by the time in the system of white supremacy, by the time he or she is around 15 years old, he or she knows the white code, which means what? They know exactly what to say and what to not say, and what to do and what not to do when they're around people of color. That is always successful for them. Why? Because they have a code. See, they don't agree with each other, but they agree with the code, and they follow the code. Black people don't have anything like that. We just stumble and fumble our way minute by minute and hope that everything works out. That's not very intelligent at all. Even Even insects have a code. They have a ritual that they follow rigidly. Why? Because it works, that's why. And we need something that's guaranteed to work for the individual person on the job and everywhere else. That's what I've tried to structure. I don't say I'm successful. Apparently I'm not, because it ain't over until it's over. But some people who have looked at it and tried some of the things that presented by going to producejustice.com, you can get the book. Some people who have tried just a few of the things said, you know what, Fuller? I tried some of those things, and they worked. And I said, well, anytime it doesn't work, you ain't supposed to ever try it again, because that's the logic. It's not about Neely Fuller. It's about the logic that whatever created you, put it with you in this universe with you. But we have been taught not to tap into logic, to rely on our emotions. And emotions without logic is doomed to failure.
All right. I got a tweet question for you. It says, what is the compensatory definition of the word help? If someone or government is offering help and the situation does not improve.
Help has a modifier in front of it. Constructive help. And you always know that it's constructive by the result. That's the only thing you measure it by. Not by what Neely Fuller says or what George Brown says or what, the King Neptune says from the bottom of the sea. It's what really works for you. You know when something works for you and when it doesn't. You ought to know that much if you don't know anything. When something works for you and not against you, but it works for you, then that should become a part of your code. And as long as it works, keep doing it. When it stops working, come up with another code. The white supremacists do that all the time. That's why they're the most successful people on earth. They'll make mistakes. But what do? When they make any kind of mistake, an aircraft falls out of the sky, they go over every detail of everything to see to it, I ain't going to make that mistake ever again in life. Not in life. They have a code for every move that they make. Black people have nothing about that. Every situation we run into with is a bunch of nerves. And our solution to everything is to jump up and screaming and start name calling and turning around and turning flips. We are very animated people. That's why they call us animals, because we can't think. It's not that we can't think, because we have brains. It's that we have been carefully trained by the white supremacists not to think under any circumstance. A black person thinking is dangerous. All right?
Having said another tweet question about the N-word, should we allow white folks, young white people, to say the N-word, and even our own black youngsters, should we allow them to say it? Should we check them?
No, first of all, we say, what is the N-word? The N-word just means one thing. The power of the so-called N-word, where does it really come from? It comes from not having a definition. You can call somebody any word that has no definition, and you can drive them crazy. There is no definition for the N-word. If you look in a dictionary, what do you see? It's a derogatory term for a black person, or a person of African descent, or Negroid heritage, some type of abstraction. But what's the key term in that definition? See, a word is nothing but a tool until you give it a definition. Now, what's the key term in the definition of the N-word? The key term is derogatory. It's a derogatory word for a person who has color in his or her skin. But they don't tell you why it's derogatory. That's where the power comes from. And that's why black people, generation after generation, are going crazy about that word. But what does the code say? When somebody calls you that word, you know the way to handle it? Let them write it all over the walls in your workplace. You can come to work and it's all over your desk, like a lot of people have broken into tears. I've read about it in the papers when they see that, and run down the hall screaming almost. We got to conquer words, folks. That's a part of the code. You don't let words conquer you. I don't care what kind of word it is. It's just a word. So all you got to do is just pull up a chair to your desk with the word "in" written all over it, and up above, on the walls above you, somebody did it during the night. You just pull up your chair and start doing your job. They can keep it there forever. I mean, I'll tell you what. If you want to test me on it, put me in that situation, Neely Fuller, and see if it bothers him. You can call me the N-word all day long. In fact, you can line up 10 million white people. Just line them up, and each one of them step forward and say it, with some of them know how to say it with that bite to it. It's got, they know how to say it with that old Southern drawl and all that. I mean, I'll just say next. All right. And finally, after all 10,000 of them go through, I said, y'all got any more? Want to call me a name? That particular name? Is that all you got? Is that all I have to deal with? As long as I'm getting paid for my time, I don't care what you call me. All right? Help yourself. I have nothing to do with that, and it has nothing to do with me. Why? Because I chose to. That's why. That's all education is. Choose
right.
it.
So even if if you're on the train or on the bus and you hear some of our youngsters using that word, what you do? Do you check them or do you leave them alone?
Oh, no, because they come under the white supremacists. I mean, if they ask me, should they use the term and all like that. I don't have the authority to check them. They're fellow prisoners. All right, prisoners walk around in the prison yard calling people all kinds of things. Now, if the white supremacists say something like, see how you people act? You call each other that name and all like that. I say, then now I got a question. I say, sir, since you're talking to me, why do they do that? See what I mean? Always go into the question mode. I want to say to the entire world audience right now, if they can hear me, all problems, this is real important. Every problem that's ever been solved and ever will be solved is solved through the process of what? Questions and answers. So all black people have to do on the job or anywhere else, when a situation comes up, stay away from making statements. Ask questions. Question after question after question after question. It will always, if those questions are answered, it will always, if you ask enough of them, take everybody, not where they particularly want to be, but it's a guarantee that it will take everybody, both the person who is asking the questions and the person who is answering the questions, it will take both of those persons, or 10 million persons, right where they should be. That's been proven all down through history. So we got to get in the habit of not making statements. Ask questions, and particularly in any situation that's volatile. Just ask questions. Just one question right after another, just like you're in court, because we are all in court, and everybody's on trial. And what's the procedures in court? Questions and answers. All right? Everybody who's ever been to court knows how deadly that is. That is deadly. Questions and answers. Not just a whole lot of rambling statements, and certainly not a whole lot of name-calling. And don't even blame people. The questions and answers will set the blame. You'll find out who's to blame just through the questions and answers. Like if I ask that white person when he says, why don't you govern your people? Why don't you, oh, he's asking a question, all right? So you answer the question. I govern my people, so you answer a question with a question. Where are my people?
Right. And with that question, we've got to roll out of here. But I want to thank you, not just for today, but for all the years of wisdom that you've left us with and your unrelenting support for black folks. Neely Fuller Jr., I just want to thank you personally for that. Thank you, thank you.
Thank me for having me aboard.
Thank you, sir.